In this video, I wanted to talk to you about one of the most important skills that I think I've learned along the journey that wasn't taught to me as part of my education, and that is mindset. And really, this took me years to fully appreciate. And I remember the moment where I started to take it more seriously, and that was when I heard a fantastic quote by Henry Ford when he said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And that really resonated with me, and I started thinking about this a little bit more and looking into some of the great business minds of our time, people like Bill Gates or Richard Branson or Steve Jobs. Now, what I appreciated is these people have 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, exactly the same as we do. But it's how they think and how they use this time that completely stands them out from the crowd and allows them to build the business that they have. And upon this journey, I started to read more. And one of the books that really opened my eyes to the kind of lack of education that I'd had around mindset was a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't read this, I would strongly recommend you do. And another one of his books called the Cashflow Quadrant, which is what I wanted to talk to you about in this video. Because this was when I really understood this. This was when I really felt like I was getting an education into things that were new in the way that I was seeing the world, the way I was seeing business, and the way that I was seeing the concept of wealth. So what I'm going to do is hop over to the whiteboard to talk about this to you in a little bit more detail. So this concept by Robert Kiyosaki, which, as I say, for me, when I first heard it and really understood it, it completely blew my mind, because it was like brand new information and things that I believe everybody should be taught. I certainly want to teach it to my children. I think it's vital life skills, particularly though if you're looking to build a business. And what I wanted to do was take this general concept and explain how that can relate to us as healthcare practitioners and some of the ways I think about my life and my business towards this concept. So what Robert Kiyosaki said is really essentially the guide to true wealth is to navigate your way through this cash flow quadrant, which is split into 4. E. Now, E stands for an employee. This is really where a large percentage of people end up. And in truth, that's where we're almost taught to end up. We are encouraged to go to school, get an education, get good grades, and get a good job and become this employee. Now, with an employee, there's some pros and there's some cons. You know, the pros are that you might have a regular, stable salary. You're able to pay the bills. You're able to provide for your family and things. But it may potentially not leave little else. The big downside to sometimes to be an employee, or the big negative, is that it's where we can get taxed the highest. So we lose a lot of that income because of some of the strict tax laws that are in place. S. Now, what an S was concept is the self-employed. So this might be, in the example of us as healthcare practitioners, somebody who starts a clinic and they work in that clinic, they deliver the appointments, they conduct the treatments, and they do the books and everything that is required to be self-employed. So there may be some benefits to this. It may give them to be allowed to be working in a job that they love to do. It may give them a chance to say the sort of clients that they want to work with. But the downside potentially is that it can take a lot of time. We have to work very hard in that business. We have to put a lot of hours into that business in order to get it to where it wants to be. And we perhaps don't have that stability. Now, it's not total stability, because when you're an employee, at any point we can lose that job. You know, our future, our destiny isn't really in our hands. But when we're self-employed, you might have more appointments one month and less appointments the other. So that's where I mentioned this sort of lack of stability at times. Now, as we navigate our way through, this B stands for big business owner. So this, in a concept for us, is someone who perhaps has staff, employees, affiliates, people who can perhaps deliver the appointments for them, but is then still bringing a form of wealth into the clinic. So this might be somebody who has a team of people. So the clinic is their clinic. Their team, their staff are then delivering the appointments, of which they are then making money on the top of it. So the good thing about this is that what we're able to then do is be decreasing some of the time that we're actually giving to the business, or to the hands-on treatment, I should say. Because what tends to happen as we transition into a business owner is that we come away from working in the business to then be working on the business. But what that does allow us to do is be generating income when we're not actually delivering the service. And this is a crucial concept, that we're not trading at this point our time for money. So if we are working in an appointment as a self-employed person, we may have a fixed amount of money that we charge per hour. So for the hour we deliver an hour appointment, we get paid that amount of money. Whereas when we are a business owner, potentially then we can be earning more money for not giving up our time. And also, as we go into the self-employed and then into a business owner, we potentially get better tax benefits. So here we would have taxable expenses. So this is where if we are buying things for our business, we will not be then taxed on that money because it's a justifiable business expense. So this is why Robert Kiyosaki said that really to build wealth, we need to navigate our way through these. And the final concept of this is the investor. Now, this here is a concept of someone who potentially can make quite a lot of money with very little time. Now, there's many ways that we can become investors. We can become investors in business, we can become investors in property, we can become investors into stock market, to name a few. But the concept here is we're really moving towards this idea of passive income. So where we are able to invest a chunk of money and then we just draw the returns from that money. And it might be that we don't have to make too many of these big business decisions or give up too much on our time. So this is where we become very time rich as an investor. And so what Robert Kiyosaki says is that we want to be really on this side of things to be gaining true wealth. And as I say, for me, this was completely eye-opening because I'd kind of always been thinking along this side of things. And when I looked at the people that had taught me throughout my life, my parents, my teachers, they all fall within this. It's very rare, or much more difficult for us to have the fantastic opportunity to be working and understanding the mindset of these people. But this is where, if we talk about the incredibly successful and the incredibly wealthy, this is where they fall under. And this is why when I heard this and I started to understand this concept, this is where I really wanted to apply this to my life. And that's what I looked to do. And what I wanted to do, and still want to do, is be as fruitful as I can in all four of these areas. I am an employee. I am an employer. I don't think that the concept of within the membership program that I'll talk about is that I built my six-figure business on top of having a full-time job. Those things didn't have to be mutually exclusive. What I wanted was to get the benefits out of all of these things. I then became self-employed. I started a clinic. I then was working in that clinic. So essentially, when you're self-employed, you give yourself a job. And I built and built and built that clinic to the point where I became a business owner. So the clinic now, we have staff. So I'm not delivering appointments at home, but I'm still making money from the money that's coming into the clinic. And then finally, as an investor, and this is the area where I really now am trying to develop my knowledge, my skills. But for example, one of the clinics was purchased at my home. It was a building that we built and we own that. So now when staff are in there and we are receiving money from that, that was our investment that is now giving us a return because it's paid off, and we are just making money off of that. So that's one area where we've become a investor, or we've made a investment as we make our way through this cash flow quadrant. I hope this concept was helpful for you. As I say, for me, it was a real eye-opener into how the successful think, and it made me realise that I'd had very little education in these matters and the way that we should be thinking in order to gain and achieve this success. Now, I appreciate this isn't for everybody, and I understand that most people are quite happy to live on the left-hand side of the quadrant in that E for employed or S for self-employed. But I myself, I wanted to transition through that cash flow quadrant. Once my eyes were opened, my passion really started to burning inside of me. And these are the people who are suited for the membership program. So if this isn't for you, if you are quite happy to stay on that left-hand side of the quadrant, I would say don't worry about the membership program. It probably isn't for you. But once inside, I will constantly be talking about mindset because, as I say, for me, that's the thing that really changed things for me in my business and journey path. So if you are somebody who wants to transition their way through the quadrant, if you are someone who's entrepreneurial, who is excited by learning these new things and really opening up how the mind thinks, then the membership and the guided lessons and being part of our tribe is exactly perfect for you.